Okay, welcome back everybody. And in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the championship series of my 1980s Stratomatic tournament. If you saw my last two videos ago, I did the 1980s American League Strat tournament where the 1989 A's came out the winner as they defeated the 1983 Orioles in the semifinals, and then in the American League Final, they defeated the 1985 Royals. So the A's come into this final round with a record of 6-1. And in my last video on my National League 80 Stratomatic tournament, the number one seed 1986 New York Mets defeated the 1988 Dodgers in the semifinal, and then they defeated the 1980 Phillies in the National League Final 3-1. So both teams come into the series winners of 6 of 7, and really felt that these probably were the two best teams in their respective league. I would say, as far as the best teams from the 1980s in Stratomatic, I would definitely throw the 1984 Tigers into the mix as one of the three top teams. But as you saw in my American League video, the one real big surprise I had in that tournament was when the 85 Royals swept the 84 Tigers. But let's get back to 1989 A's and 1986 Mets. A couple of thoughts about the two teams before we get into the results of this championship round. I would probably say that both teams, I don't really see a distinct advantage of one team over the other in terms of lineup. I think both teams have very good lineups, good mix of right-handed and left-handed hitting in the lineup. I would say with the 1986 Mets, I definitely like their lineup against right-handed pitching better because, as it was in real life, it always seems like Dykstra and Backman are starting something when they're out there and setting the table for that classic trio that the 86 Mets had with Hernandez third, Carter four, and Strawberry five. And then as you go deeper into the lineup, you got Ray Knight and Mookie Wilson hitting down there. So there's really no automatic outs in this 1986 Mets lineup. And you could say the same thing for the 1989 A's. Very good lineup, very good on base percentages. A lot of guys very good at getting on base. One major red flag that came up as I was looking at the two teams preparing to play this series was the 1986 Mets pitchers were just not good at holding runners on. And with the Oakland A's speed throughout their lineup, that could be a big factor in this series. Couple that with the fact that Gary Carter had a zero arm in 1986. Well, that was probably due to the fact that the Mets pitchers were just not good at holding runners on because Gary Carter in years past in Stratomatic had -4, -3 arms. So that could be a big factor as we go into the series. I think pitching, both starting pitching and bullpen, is pretty much of a wash between the two teams. Both of them have very good starting pitching. And if you saw my American League video, I was talking about how good the Oakland A's bullpen was in 1989, and it was really good. But let's not forget the 1986 Mets have Jesse Orosco and Roger McDowell in their bullpen, who are both 3 innings relievers, so they could eat up a lot of innings, which is good. And also, you also got Rick Aguilera back there in the bullpen, who was a servable pitcher. So, really, going into this series, I really see it being a pretty evenly matched series on paper, but now it's a matter of just finding out what happened and how the games actually play out. So let's take a look into that right now. In game number one, classic matchup here. Game one, we've got Dave Stewart for the Oakland A's and Dwight Gooden going for the New York Mets. And you're going to see in game number one, the Oakland A's were able to take it by a 3-0 score. Dwight Gooden had a tough luck loss as he only allowed one earned run in 8 innings. Only allowed 5 hits and 11 strikeouts, but Dave Stewart pitches 8 scoreless, and Dennis Eckersley gets the save. For the Oakland A's, you had a solo home run by Steinbach and a 2-run homer by Mark McGuire. And the reason why that 2-run home run, those runs were unearned, was because with one out, Lansford reached on a Wally Backman error. and then McGuire hit a two-out homer. So the Oakland A's were able to take the first game by a score of 3-0. And in the second game, the New York Mets were able to walk it off in the bottom half of the 11th inning as Stan Jefferson hit a two-out solo home run off of Dennis Eckersley. So the New York Mets are able to get the second game, which they absolutely had to have, to go back to Oakland tied 1-1. You can see another good game pitched out of Bob Ojeda as he goes 7 innings, only allows 2 runs. McDowell, 1 scoreless inning, and Jesse Orosco goes 3 innings, only allowing 1 run to get the win. So the Mets and the A's head to Oakland for game 3 with the series tied at 1. Now, as we move on to game number 3 here, we got Ron Darling going for the Mets and Bob Welch going for the Oakland A's, and you're going to see the Oakland A's were able to jump on Ron Darling pretty hard here in the first couple of innings. You had Henderson lead off with a walk and a stolen base. Lansford drove him in with an RBI single. And then after Canseco lined out into a double play, Dave Parker hits a home run. So they lead 2-0 after 1. And then they would lead 5-0 after 3 as Mark McGuire hits a 3-run home run. And from there, it was just an easy win for the Oakland A's as Bob Welch cruised for 7 innings, only allowing 1 run. Mets really never posed a threat. So as we go into game 4, the New York Mets trail the 1989 A's 2 games to 1. So what I decided to do here, managing for both teams, I decided that the Mets were going to go with Dwight Gooden on 3 days rest in game number 4. And for the Oakland A's, even though I know probably in real life, if this was like an actual series, like I know Dave Stewart probably would have pitched the fourth game, but my thinking here was, Storm Davis has a good enough card to run him out there, and also knowing how good the Oakland A's bullpen is. I kind of figured going in, okay, well, if I could just play this game from an Oakland A's standpoint of where if I could get ahead early and maybe get 4 or 5 innings out of Storm Davis and then ride the bullpen the rest of the way, that would be their plan of action to win this game. And for the New York Mets, really the best call was to just run Dwight Gooden out there on 3 days rest and try to get this game, because this is not a series where either team, in my opinion, wants to fall behind big in the series. And I looked at this game as really a must win for the 1986 Mets. So let's take a look at what happened in game number 4. And we're going to see that the Oakland A's were able to win it in 10 innings by a score of 4-3. In that bottom half of the 10th, Ricky Henderson led off with a walk, and Carty Lansford drove him in with a double. So Roger McDowell gets the loss in the game for the Mets. Dwight Gooden, again, pitched very well. He went 8 innings, only allowing 2 earned runs, 6 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. And you could see a really big performance out of the Oakland A's bullpen. Gene Nelson goes 2 scoreless, Rick Honeycutt goes 1 scoreless, and Dennis Eckersley gets the win, throwing 2 scoreless innings. So the 1986 Mets are really up against it now, being down 3 games to 1 to the 1989 Oakland A's with game number 5 still in Oakland. So if you're the 86 Mets, you're thinking, okay, let's just find a way to get game 5 and get the series back to Shea. So let's see what happens in game number 5, where we have Dave Stewart going for the Oakland A's. He's pitching on normal rest. And we got Bob Ojeda going on 3 days rest for the 1986 Mets. And you're going to see once again that combination of Henderson, Lansford just get the game rolling for the Oakland A's. Leadoff single, stolen base by Ricky. Then Lansford drives him home with a double. Then Jose Canseco drives home Lansford with an RBI single. So Oakland's up 2-0 after 1. Bottom half of the third, you got a Mark McGuire RBI double and then a RBI sac fly by Stan Javier. So Oakland leads 4-1 after 3. And from there, Oakland pitching was just able to close it out. You see Dave Stewart goes 7 innings, allowing 3 runs. Rick Honeycutt came in to get an out, and Dennis Eckersley goes 1 2/3 scoreless innings. So there you have it. The 1989 Oakland A's defeat the 1986 Mets in my 1980 Stratomatic tournament final, 4 games to 1. Now, let me go through a few things that we saw in this series in more detail. Let me highlight a couple of players that really had standout performances for the Oakland A's. The first player I'm going to talk about is Ricky Henderson. Now, Ricky only went 4 for 17 in this series, but the reason why I always felt like he was one of the greatest offensive players that I ever saw was because I always felt like Ricky Henderson was a guy who could go 0 for 2 in a game and dominate a game. And we saw that in this series. As I said, he went 4 for 17 in the series. However, he walked 7 times, stole 9 bases, and scored 6 runs. How about that out of Ricky Henderson? 9 stolen bases and 6 runs scored in 5 games. Carty Lansford, who hit behind Ricky Henderson in that lineup, he goes 11 for 23 in the series with 7 stolen bases, 6 RBI, and 3 run score. And don't forget, he probably had the biggest hit in the series where he had the walk-off RBI hit to win game number 4. And that was pretty much a death blow to the 1986 Mets because coming back from down 3-1 against this 1989 Oakland A's team would have been really, really hard. I would have liked to have seen the series go back to Shea and just see what would have happened if the series went longer, but it just wasn't in the cards for the 86 Mets in this series. Let me highlight the Oakland A's bullpen here. In 13 innings of work in the 5 games, they only allowed 4 runs. Dennis Eckersley within this series had a win and 2 saves. I also mentioned earlier in the video how the Oakland A's speed could give the Mets a lot of trouble, and it would have been interesting to see if the Mets can keep guys like Henderson and Lansford off the bases. Well, obviously that did not happen, and you're going to see here that the Oakland A's stole 17 out of 18 bases in the series. They only got caught stealing once in the 5 games, and they stole 17 bases in the series. So Oakland really played into their strengths in this series of getting guys on base and really moving runners around. And in the series, it wasn't like McGuire and Canseco went crazy hitting home runs all the time. It's like lots of times it was just Henderson getting on, Lansford driving them in, and then there were a few times where Lansford stole bases and he'd get driven in by a single by Canseco. So really just total dominance by the Oakland A's. And speaking of their dominance in this overall tournament, they go 10-2 in the tournament as they defeat the 1983 Orioles in the semifinal. They defeat the 1985 Royals in the AL final, and then they beat the 86 Mets in the tournament final. So they go 10-2, beating 3 World Series champion teams. 10-2. Keep in mind, this isn't me going 10-2 over the course of 2 weeks when I play a season with the 1980 Yankees and I beat up on teams like the 1980 Twins and the 1980 White Sox. I mean, this is going 10-2 against 3 World Series championship teams. And within this series against the Mets, let's take a look here. Oakland only trailed, let's see, they trailed going to the top of the ninth of game 2. They trailed 3-1 after 5.5 in game 4. Also in game 4, they trailed 3-2 after 6.5. And of course, Stan Jefferson had the walk-off home run to win game number 2. So Oakland only trailed in 3 innings in this series. They trailed in 3 innings in 5 games against the 1986 New York Mets. So really just complete dominance by the 1989 Oakland A's. Was I surprised at how easily they beat the New York Mets? I would say the way this series played out, not really, because uh, the top of their lineup with Ricky Henderson and Carney Lansford is so good at getting on base that it just opens the door for the Oakland offense just to get runs in and build the lead. And with that, with the good starting pitching that the 1989 Oakland A's had and the great bullpen that they had, once this team gets ahead in the game, it's very, very hard to come back on them. So there you have it. The 1989 Oakland A's are my 1980 Stratomatic Tournament World Champions. Thanks for watching.